The processes, the systems, and the workflows necessary to bill insurance have absolutely nothing to do with helping patients to understand and pay their bills. Nothing. And so patient billing requires a whole different set of systems and skill sets and people in order to do it right.
That was the voice of David Fredericksen, founder and CEO of PatientFocus. David shared a story with us explaining how the company tackles one of healthcare's biggest problems by putting the patients first. You're listening to How I Transformed This, presented by Versus 12. Versus 12 is the award-winning Salesforce Gold consulting partner focused on healthcare innovation nationwide. In this episode, David Fredericksen highlights why pairing technology in a patient-centered mission might be the future of healthcare, and he helps us understand how his company was able to do that so successfully.
Like I said, our mission statement is put the patient first. The money will follow. That's the truth. Keeping patients at the center of everything is going to be where healthcare providers find success.
I'm your host, Clark Buckner, and along with Versus 12 founder and CEO Tammy Hawes, each episode we'll be seeking out healthcare technology industry leaders, exploring stories of success through the transformation of healthcare. For more stories like this, visit versus12.com/podcast. Now let's jump in.
So, David Fredericksen, I am so happy that you're here today. I know your story because I know you personally, and I've heard about all the things that you have accomplished at PatientFocus and how you started the company and what's in your heart and how technology plays a role in that. So thank you for agreeing to be here today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So Tammy and I are so excited to do this. And now, Tammy, you know David's story a lot more, of course, than I do. And I remember meeting David, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. We were talking about this healthcare journey you've been on. But Tammy, how would you describe David's story in just, a short 30-second sneak peek, and then we're going to jump into how David got his start?
So David identified an opportunity that did not exist in the market based on how current healthcare trends are changing. Patient is at the center of care, and then also how the reimbursement model is changing. And because of that, and because of all the different trends that are coming to surface now with value-based care and with how the market is changing in healthcare, there's not technology out of the box to solve those different situations. So that did not stop David at all. He saw an opportunity, he seized an opportunity, he picked the right technology, and he was on his way. So I'm so excited to hear him talk about it.
Well, David, can you rewind us back to the beginning of just how you got your start? Like, what is your why in healthcare?
I grew up in it. My father was a cardiologist. My mother taught medical school at Vanderbilt. My sister is a clinical psychologist. And I quickly realized that the world would be a safer place if I were not a doctor. That is my gift to you, Clark, and the rest of humanity. But I grew up in the middle of the healthcare world and raised by doctors, and all my parents' friends were doctors. And so it's been very real to me my whole life. And so when my career started, it was a natural inclination for me to get into the business side of healthcare because I knew it and I loved it.
When did you know you actually loved it? You grew up surrounded by this, but it was like a moment when you decided, you know what, I'm going to really actually do this kind of work.
That's a good question. I would say that it made sense to me. I mean, healthcare is bizarre. I mean, you step outside the clinical side of things. Nothing really makes any sense. Up is down, left is right. Anything you know about market economics flies right out the window. But I was able to understand it and explain it. And I had some tremendous resources in my family to go deeper and learn more about it.
I second that. Left is right and up is down in healthcare and the business side.
Dogs and cats living together. It's insane.
Wow. So any highlights you can share just on this journey you've had in your career that has led you to really recognize kind of how backwards some things are? Any big moments in your career that's kind of led to this out-of-the-box thinking that has helped you with your success?
Sure. One of the things that illuminates issues, problems, and sort of where all the parties lie, it's based on a very simple premise, and that's follow the money. Who is getting paid for doing what? Who is not getting paid? And if you were to make a change in any type of reimbursement transaction or in any type of delivery of care, who benefits and who loses, because there are so many conflicting parties given the economics of healthcare that one person's upside is another person's down. So it all boils down to who has more political capital, more political will, a louder voice, more pull to maintain the status quo or to improve their lot. It's a very strange world. But if you follow the money, you can unearth a whole lot of problems.
And sometimes the patient is on the lower end of that totem pole, right?
They're dead last.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, why is that?
Well, the patient's at the center of the clinical care. Obviously, there's no care, there's no patient, there's not anything in healthcare until a doctor sits down with a patient, period. However, when it comes to the reimbursement or the economics of healthcare, the patient has been removed from that equation given the historical role that insurance has played in the marketplace. Whereas the decisions a patient makes relative to their healthcare, good, bad, or indifferent, bear no economic consequence for that patient. I mean, Larry Van Horn has this great analogy about if I speed in my car and I get tickets, my car insurance rates go up, okay? But if I eat Hardee's all day, every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, my health insurance doesn't change. I still pay the same amount. So the moral of the story is don't speed on the way to Hardee's. So the consequences of decisions that patients make have very little bearing on the economics that impact them. However, that's beginning to change dramatically. And some people say it's a bad thing, it's a painful thing. It really is. Change is painful. But when it comes to the fact that patients are having to pay more out of pocket today than they ever were before, there are some good things that are coming out of that. Patients are, and people are starting to take a greater role in their own healthcare and not just relying on insurance to pay for it and their doctors to cure them.
I love all this. This is so awesome. And so I'm going to ask, David, from your perspective, from everything you've seen growing up to where you're at today and this role at PatientFocus, what are the pain points that, in your opinion, are hurting families the most today in healthcare?
There's a whole lot, starting with a clinical diagnosis of any kind can impact the health, the emotional, spiritual, and even the financial well-being of an entire family. That's tough. And so if you break it apart and the clinical side, you can dive deep into that, and it's not just the devastation of the illness, but access to care. How easy is it or difficult for that patient and their family to receive care? Do they have to travel a significant distance? Are they limited because of their insurance or lack of it to receive that care? There's a whole host of issues with that. Just, read the political discourse of the people running for president, and you can hear a whole lot about that. Access to care. It's a big deal. On the financial side, there's obviously, who's going to pay for it. Even if you have insurance, there are still large dollar amounts that have to be paid by the patient in the form of deductibles and uncovered expenses, co-insurance that most patients are not prepared to pay. And the billing process to call it a mess is an insult to everything that's a mess. It, again, doesn't make much sense. When a patient gets a bill, it's not clear, they're not consistent, and they sure as heck aren't convenient.
So there's a lot of confusion. I hear people all the time talk about this, and I know this is probably no new news to you both, but we hear all these things about how so many industries, financial, you're talking about insurance, how it's so advanced, but yet healthcare just seems to be such a lagging industry. So it seems like all this is really bubbling up.
So I do believe that most patients will pay if they know what to pay, but it's so hard to know what to pay, and it seems so overwhelming when you get a bill for $15,000 and maybe you don't even make $15,000 in a year.
Yeah, the process of patient billing is confusing at best. It doesn't make much sense. You get a lot of different bills from seemingly the same place for seemingly the same thing, and they change. A lot of patients operate under the assumption that their insurance is going to cover all of it, and insurance doesn't. And so it's interesting. People call that surprise billing. When you get a surprise bill from a doctor or a hospital for a stay, on the provider side, they call it surprise coverage. In other words, no, you're not covered for that at the rate you thought you were, and you still owe that $15,000 because of your coverage, which you thought covered you, but it really, in fact, doesn't.
And then sometimes the patient gets a bill before insurance has even been applied, and that's not really the amount they're due to pay.
Good point. Absolutely. And what you're dealing with is a process where the hospital or the physician's office who are doing the billing have told you, or basically are operating under the assumption that you owe this bill 100% of it, and that they're going to claim it to your insurance on your behalf. If it happens or not, doesn't matter. You're still on the hook for it. And so if they do it incorrectly, you can do something as simple as put a wrong digit in the wrong place, and insurance rejects it. And so now you owe the full $15,000, and now you have to go fight with your insurance company to make sure that it gets done. I mean, this happens every day. It is everybody who is listening to this podcast has a story. Everybody is affected by this. Everybody has had a bill that made no sense and had to go back and talk to someone, and they got moved around and tossed around from one place to another, back and forth between an insurance company and the billing office. This is universal. The good news is the fact that patients are having to pay more out of pocket means that they're going to start voting with their feet. And if they go to a hospital where they feel mistreated during the billing process, they're not going back. Even though their doctors say, "Hey, I want you to go to St. Elsewhere Hospital," that patient's going to say, "No, not going. That place is a train wreck." That's a good thing. That means that hospitals and doctors are going to have to step up and do a better job of explaining in a clear, consistent, and convenient manner why the patient owes what they owe and how they can pay it over time.
I love how, as you continue to talk more about this, you can really just feel the energy and the passion. So before we talk about maybe some examples, anything you want to touch on just why you named this Patient Focus?
No, it's simple, because our mission statement is put the patient first. When it comes to the billing process, the patient has always come sort of dead last. Everything that is required to bill insurance is a very technical process. It's a tedious process, and most billing offices have gotten relatively good at it. But the processes, the systems, and the workflows necessary to bill insurance have absolutely nothing to do with helping patients to understand and pay their bills. Nothing. And so patient billing requires a whole different set of systems and skill sets and people in order to do it right.
Yeah.
So, David, you've got fantastic examples of patients and families who have called in to your company asking questions about their bill and seeing how PatientFocus can help. Can you share some of those highlights?
Sure. Most patients who call in to make a payment or inquire about their bill don't understand what they owe or why they owe it. So a lot of our conversations are about their insurance coverage. Here's what was paid, here's what was not, and why. And then it's a function of helping that patient understand, okay, here's what you owe, and let's figure out a way that works for you to pay it. So we set up payment plans. The patients can take as long as they want to pay. There is no interest. It's about finding the right process, the right budget and time frame that works for the patient. And putting the patient front and square and meeting their needs is where success lies.
So I know you've got some fantastic stories as well on the provider side of helping them, number one, do a service for their patients that are sick, and then also for helping them collect money that they may not otherwise collect if the patient doesn't understand or feels like they're not in a position to actually make those payments. So tell us about some of those good return on investment stories as well.
Sure. And that's a great point. I mean, yes, patient billing is difficult for patients. There's no question about that. But the other side of that not many people are talking about is the fact that patient billing is difficult for the providers as well, because they lack the systems and the workflows and the staff to be able to adequately address the fact that they've moved from a total of 5 payers, the traditional insurance companies, to 5 to 50,000 patients, that they have to bill. Used to be 5, now it's 50,000, depending on the volume moving through a hospital. So because these hospitals, these providers lack the systems and they lack the processes and the people, what we have at PatientFocus have come up with is a solution that removes all of that headache and all of that workflow from their shoulders and moves it through a system that we designed and built on Salesforce to accommodate the unique workflows of patient billing by putting the patient at the center and working around their needs and their budget and their time frames. It required a system that no hospital has, no physician office has, so we had to make one from scratch.
So it's basically a win-win on both sides.
It certainly can be.
Let's talk more about how you truly transformed this. This whole theme of the show is we're trying to understand some of the trends, some of the challenges, the pain points, and all of this. But ultimately, how are ways that we can overcome those? And I would love to hear, how did you come to that conclusion that that was the right vehicle for you, and how Salesforce could be used for this? And maybe we could talk about some outcomes that have come from this, some of the big successes.
Sure. When we first started, there was really no off-the-shelf product we could utilize to create a patient billing system that would accommodate the clarity, convenience, and consistency required for patient billing.
For timeline, what year is that when you started?
This was in 2010.
Okay. You were feeling the challenges because as you were helping more of these hospitals build more people,
Right.
you had to scale up with them,
Right.
and that was not working well.
No, you can't. I wouldn't recommend doing this out of Excel. We tried. So we had a custom platform that we hired developers on our team, and we developed a minimum viable product. It worked well for the first 2 or 3 clients that we had because we built it around them. The problem with building any kind of custom software is analogous to making anything out of Play-Doh. Play-Doh is fun. It's colorful. It's neat. You can make whatever you want, but you can't take it apart or put it back together without it completely falling apart and making a giant mess. You can't leave it out too long or it dries up and crumbles up.
That's the worst.
That's what custom software is like. You have to take care of it. It's customized, but it's tough to manage over time.
How many developers did you have?
We had about 8. And when we realized that our custom platform was not sustainable, wasn't scalable for growth as we started adding more clients, we realized we needed a platform that could scale with us. And the one that didn't require the heavy amounts of maintenance and Play-Doh-like constrictions of, we can't make a change without making a big mess. And we also knew that to rebuild one from scratch was just not tenable. We didn't have the budget. We certainly didn't have the time because we were trying to put on clients as fast as we could. So we did some research and decided that Salesforce was the platform that provided the absolute best options for us. Configurable software like Salesforce is like building something out of Lego. To sort of extend the metaphor here, Lego is great. It comes apart, it goes back together. You can build whatever you want. It's designed to do that, whereas Play-Doh is not. So what we were able to do with Salesforce is take all of the intellectual property, everything that we'd learned over the previous 5 years in terms of workflows and what works best and best practices, and create workflows that we establish for our clients while ensuring that we maintained clarity, consistency, and convenience for the patients.
So, David, you are the master of analogies. And I think you hit on 2 points there that we speak to all the time, and that is flexibility and scalability. Mm-hmm. Because if you're building any kind of company to be sustainable, it has to be scalable. And the business models are changing so quickly that developing software the old-fashioned way, which it's been my entire career, started my career as a software developer, but building software that old-fashioned way is not scalable or sustainable when the business models are changing
as fast as they are. And the cost associated with making those changes on a custom platform are too great for smaller companies, which is why Salesforce was such a great choice for us. We went from 8 developers down to 1. We hired consultants to help us design and build and put it all together. And then we have a Salesforce technical person on staff who does a phenomenal job with upgrading, changing, and adapting. And making those changes only requires 1 person rather than 8.
So you move faster, and those savings, I'm sure, it's getting passed along.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can do this faster and cheaper, less overhead, provide more value to our clients in a faster way with better reporting, better insight. We used to have a joke about, running a marble into the machine and not knowing when that marble's going to come out or where it is at any time. But with Salesforce, all of that is so transparent. Everything is right where you left it. You can find it.
And a huge smile on Tammy's face when you say that.
Salesforce is good stuff.
Love this. Okay, this is awesome. So I love the analogies. That really helps me understand this. So any other examples, any other outcomes, any other ways for me to kind of grasp onto what it looks like when you are able to put that marble in the system and know where it actually is,
sure,
and make it much more predictable and understandable?
I'll give you an example. When someone says a revenue cycle in healthcare, that is a long, lengthy process that passes through many, many hands. And there's all kinds of things that can happen and should happen, as well as plenty that shouldn't happen as a patient and a claim moves through that process. There are hundreds, if not thousands of different companies that play a little thin role within that process. I'll give you an example. There's one called RevFind. RevFind is a small company that takes databases of patients that have claims and looks for class action lawsuits that can help pay some of those claims. RevFind's a great little company. Do I have any interest in replicating what RevFind does? Not in the least. However, I would love to be able to integrate with their process. And what Salesforce allows you to do is build a workflow where I can take a batch of patient claims, upload them to RevFind. RevFind does their thing and feeds it back into the system, and I've got it already built into the workflow. Patients that meet this criteria go left, other ones go right. I can partner with so many of these platforms, these small little niche players, because I'm built on Salesforce, than I ever could if I were running on a custom platform. Salesforce has integrations with everything from the largest, most sophisticated, healthcare electronic medical records to my toaster. I believe I can integrate with Salesforce. Still working on that.
I love it. That's good. Okay, good. I like that. Any other examples that we haven't touched on that you think we should talk about?
Well, the keys to patient billing are simple. It's the execution can sometimes be difficult, and that's making sure that whatever you communicate to a patient is clear, consistent, and convenient.
Super helpful example. Any others that come to mind?
Results are really what matters at the end of the day. And so there's two sides to it. On the client side, our average lift in revenue from baseline is 51%. So I don't know about you, but I could use a 50% raise. That would be nice. I wouldn't argue with that for a minute. But that's our average. That's just by being clear and consistent and convenient. Now, all of that is being enabled by Salesforce, by having a platform that allows my people to do what they do in an efficient manner. Systems aren't going to solve all the problems. You have to have people. And we've got really great people that are empowered by the tools that Salesforce has enabled us to create and put forth to give our clients a 50% raise in their patient pay revenue. At the same time, because the system is designed in such a way that is clear and consistent and convenient, patient complaints for our clients drop to near zero. Because we can answer all the questions that the patients have when they call the call center. We have all the information that we need to satisfy their questions and help them understand what they have to pay.
So, David, your clients don't have to really do anything other than provide you a file. You have the technology and you also have the people.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not buying a system from you. They're buying a service that's a technology-enabled service. Is that correct?
That's perfectly said. But PatientFocus is a technology-enabled service. So we provide an outsourced patient pay billing office, if you will, that's for our clients. We are our clients' patient billing office.
Love that. This has been super fun. I've loved this. So as we're starting to wrap up and as we're starting to kind of think about this format we've been using, the past, present, future, now we're at that future part. I would love to hear your thoughts on maybe the future of where this is going, where the technology is going, kind of high level, and then maybe, Tammy, you can help us drill down into some more specifics. So big picture, David, what are your thoughts on the future?
On the future of healthcare, patients are going to have to pay for more and more of it out of their pocket. That's just a fact. That's not going away. I think those healthcare providers that partner with technology companies that can help them keep the patient at the center of the issue, helping patients to understand and pay their bills, helping the patient to answer their questions. There's plenty of solutions out there that make life easier for a billing office, but have nothing to do with the patient. That's not going to solve anything because the patients aren't going away and the patients still have to pay more out of pocket. So those hospitals, those providers, those physicians who work with companies to help answer patients' questions and help them understand and pay their bills are the ones who are going to be successful.
And because patients are going to be paying more, they're also going to demand more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if patients are demanding more because they'll probably get what they want.
Absolutely. It clears up the market economics that are so messed up in healthcare when you have a customer who's actually benefiting from the economic decisions. And if money's coming out of my pocket, I want to be able to, affect some kind of change, whether it's change my doctor, change my hospital. If I'm paying for it, I'm going to make those decisions. And that's always a good thing.
In years past, technology has been seen as a necessary evil. But now I believe as a consumer myself, I expect it. I love it when I open up my Amazon app and I see that my package is 4 blocks away. And I know exactly when I need to have my clothes put on so I can go to the door and answer the door.
But it's the truth. I mean, for all intent and purpose, your smartphone is a magic wand. I mean, you can order food, a song, a ride, a reservation, anything you want.
Anything, right.
That's the normal. That is normal today. So there's no reason why patients shouldn't have that same expectation from, of their doctors and healthcare providers. And they do.
Makes sense. This has been great. So anything else, David, on your mind or on your heart that you've not shared with us yet? Anything else you want to leave us with?
Like I said, our mission statement is put the patient first. The money will follow. That's the truth. So keeping patients at the center of everything is going to be where healthcare providers find success, whether they partner with us or build it themselves or go somewhere else.
So, David, you were very first to market with this concept before it really became a buzzword of patient-centered healthcare, I believe. So you started the company in...
We put our first client on in 2010.
So you're way ahead of the curve. There's a lot of people that have a lot of catching up to do. So congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. We really love this. Thanks for listening to How I Transformed This, Success Stories of Transformation in Healthcare, presented by Versus 12. To learn more about how Versus 12 is best situated to transform the healthcare industry and to follow along with this show, be sure to visit versus12.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.